landscape of Britain. This weird series of pitted hollows is known as Grimes Graves, but the key to its mysterious surface lies underground. Ancient miners dug shafts and side channels through the chalk with antler picks to excavate their precious flint. These nodules formed a seam 12 metres down, and tools made from these mines have been found as far away as Scotland. As archaeologists have uncovered both crude and magnificent stone tools, many have ended up here, in the vaults of the British Museum.
One of the things that's really fascinating about bushcraft is the view it gives us of our ancestors. If we were to see that in a museum, we'd read the label, 350,000 years old, and we'd see its shape. But once we start to learn how to work this material, we see it completely differently. Now we look carefully at it and see how its manufacturer solved problems. It gives us an insight into their mind. And of course, human evolution is mirrored in the development of flint-working techniques. By 6,000 years ago, things were a lot more sophisticated. Now we've got these broad, thin tools made for very specialist purposes, a whole range of different tools to do different jobs. This is a discoidal knife, flaked on one edge, polished on the other. A beautiful tool. Again, our understanding of these tools helps us to see into the past, to understand the mindset of the people who made these things, and really perceive their world in a completely different manner. It's like travelling in time.
And other drawers hold further clues to the diversity of our Aboriginal culture.
You can see by the picture what that's all about.
That's amazing. Look at that.
You see the fish coming up through the water?
It's a fish, isn't it? Yeah. With a hook in its mouth.
And on a line. And of course that's extraordinary for us because we don't have any line or string or rope preserved. So to actually have a little drawing on a fish hook.
That is remarkable, and it's beautifully executed. And
So-
how old is that?
That's about 12,500 years, so that's right at the end of the last ice age. And these lovely little needles are from the same site as these fish hooks.
And it's so thin.
Yes.
I mean, looking at it that way, you can see how fragile the eye is.
Yeah, but just the right size to be threaded with sinew.
Yes. Do you find many of these that are broken?
Lots of broken ones, but very often they turn up in sites in vast numbers. You get 800 or 900 needles, which really emphasises how important this piece of kit was. This comes from the site of Starcar in Yorkshire, about 8,000 years ago.
8,000 years ago.
This is, I'm sure you know what it is, it's a piece of bracket fungus.
Yep. Wow, that's amazing. This is an incredibly useful material. This is one of the most useful materials in bushcraft. And use that to make a very good tinder which will catch a spark. The type of spark that people who lived in a world without metal were able to make. I've always thought of you as the keeper of the crown jewels because from my perspective I think these things are more fascinating than any baubles the royal family wears. But clearly we are just glimpsing how the world of our ancestors was. How sophisticated do you think they were?
From my point of view, I think they're very sophisticated. We must remember that all the things that we've looked at were made by fully modern people like us. And certainly by the end of the last ice age, people have really got it sussed that their bushcraft is not simply eking out a living on the edge. These people are surviving with forests full of opportunity, and they make use of it all. And they clearly have a spiritual life and an artistic life which we only get glimpses of through the archaeology, but it's every bit as sophisticated as what we know in the present time from many different communities and even from our own way of life.
Marvellous.
But not all artefacts are so beautiful. Some of the most intriguing are the ones with imperfections. The Ashcott Heath bow, made over 4,700 years ago, is one of Britain's oldest, but the half fragment raises a whole host of questions for the country's top bow maker.
Now this, in some respects, is very, very similar to what we know of today as a longbow. They've used the most wildest, awful timber from a very, very badly selected tree, in my opinion. The worst choice of wood that I would take to make a bow, because of the small knots and pins. Any knots or defects could tear the bow apart. But the workmanship again is still good, even on this. And bearing in mind they were using stone tools. Normally in wooden bow making, the actual back face of the bow is formed by the outer part of the tree, which on a yew tree is a thin white band of sapwood, which is very, very elastic. So it's a sort of a safety feature of bow making that we've known about for many, many years. But in this instance, they've actually removed the sapwood completely, and we've got a solid piece of the heartwood of a yew tree.
If we want to understand how this weapon was made and whether it ever worked, Chris and I will have to recreate this bow, but leaving our modern tools and workshop behind.
Get the shape and style of bow that we want from it.
Well, Chris, this is the kind of technology that was used in the period of the Ashcott Heath. I mean, they didn't have any metal at all. All of their tools were made of flint. It was a very wide-ranging toolkit, really, quite specialised. This blade is very sharp. You could use that like a draw knife, you know, you could pull it down the wood like this. But I think the key tools are the ones we've got here, these adzes. These tools are used very much like this in the hand here, and they are surprisingly effective. I think the secret is to get the taper right from the tip and then work it further up. With my knowledge of flint tools and Chris's bow making skills, we should make the perfect combination. But it does give you quite nice refined trim. You need to get the feel of
the angle of the...
But you can't test a bow without arrows, so I've got to gather the materials to make these arrowheads fly. One of the key things I'm going to need is some glue to attach the arrowhead to the shaft, and for that the best answer is pine resin. What I'm looking for are these dry areas here. That looks just like wood, but actually what I've got here is hardened resin. Take this stone tool and I just get that. You see there? You see that's resin, powdery resin, absolutely perfect for my needs. There's something really satisfying about this Stone Age technology. It's tremendously levelling. It's a grounding force. It reminds you where we all came from, and some of these resources are just marvellous. The smell of this stuff is fantastic. Oh, wonderful. And for the arrow shafts, hazel. What I'm looking for is a nice straight piece, roughly the right diameter to begin with. I'll just tear it off like that. This is how I've seen arrows collected in Africa. Just very simple, straightforward. Another nice one there. It's coming on a tree, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard work, but we've got quite a way down the process. I'm working on the back face of the bow, and while she was away, I brought the shave, and I've been using that to reduce the layers on the back of the bow and take quite a bit of wood off, actually. It's a very, very good tool.
Good tool, isn't it?
I've never used a tool like that in my life in stone, so I was quite impressed with what you can do with it.
And these tools, they're much slower than metal, aren't they?
Oh, you need more calories to use them, definitely.
Yeah. Before I can get on with the arrows, I have to get a fire going, the Stone Age way, using a kit dating back 8,000 years. The key item was this here. This is iron porites, and from this, with their flint, they could strike small dull red sparks with which they could start their fire. Their tinder was made from horse's hoof fungus, the same species I'd seen in the British Museum. Because the sparks we get from the iron porites are so cool, the tinder has to be very carefully prepared, and to do that